Contrary to one's belief, no one likes to be alone. If everyone around you leaves and your social circle becomes non existent, you will find that special someone, and it will be you and that person against the world. To stare into the eyes of someone and see your future is to submit your own destiny to their way of life. For together we become one, and a single person can only bear one heartbeat. I think we as humans are hardwired to want love, acceptance. To give your heart away is to give a piece of you to someone and hope they cherish it as if it were their own. Sometimes we give that piece of us to the wrong person, and before giving it back, they will take the rest of you, leaving nothing but bare bones. And sometimes when there's nothing left, you cease to exist.
March 8th, 1995. The world would make way for Brianna. Wood. When she entered this world, she would be raised by her mother, Fallon Wood, residing in Las Vegas, Nevada. Brianna is described as fun, loving, affectionate, a person who can make you laugh with her goofy personality, as well as making you feel important with her open arms. The early years of her education would be spent in Las Vegas, where she would attend elementary, on up to high school, where she would attend Spring Valley High School. But during her high school years, her family would make a transition to Corpus Christi, Texas, where she would finish out her education at Richard King High School. As an adult, Brianna would work a number of jobs, such as being a cashier at Taco Bell, and even a salesperson at a local Mitsubishi automobile lot. Around the age of 19, she would meet a love interest in her life. She would begin dating a guy named Braulio Soto. At this point in her life, everything for Brianna seemed great. She would often take to social media to brag about her relationship, and she would relay the love that her boyfriend showed her. However, around 2015, her boyfriend would be locked up. In the beginning, she stood by his side, but with him having a lengthy sentence, the space between them began to separate them, and they went their separate ways. By 2016, Brianna would be 21 years old. By now, she has grown into an intelligent adult. She has her own apartment. She worked a full-time job that allowed her to pay her bills. So right now, she's comfortable. She's even captured the attention of another guy, a man who goes by the name of Joseph Tejada. But just like her ex, Braulio, Joseph was no stranger to the criminal system. He had ties to the streets, and he just wasn't a good guy. So, like deja vu, this relationship too wouldn't work out. They would often break up and get back together. But around October of 2016, Brianna would finally call it quits. For good this time. She would make preparations to continue her life without him. October 11th, 2016. It was a normal day for Brianna. She would go to work and get off, and then she would spend time in her apartment. However, on that night, she had other plans. She would receive a call from Joseph to meet him out, and she would agree. It isn't clear on why they were meeting, whether or not they were meeting up to discuss their relationship, or whether they had decided to remain friends. But nonetheless, they had decided to meet at the PMI market at the intersection of Tonkawa Street and Hancock Avenue. Even as an adult, Brianna was very close with her mother, and she would often text her, whether it be to let her know she loves her, or just to let her know what she has going. And on that night at 10 p.m., her mother would receive a text. In this text, Brianna would tell her mother that she was headed home. But little did her mother know that this text message would be their last form of communication, because this would be the last time she ever heard from her daughter. In the coming days after October 11th of 2016, Brianna was nowhere to be found. Her friends hadn't seen her, and no one knew her whereabouts. A daughter who normally kept in touch with her mother was now silent, and by October 18th of 2016, her mother knew in her heart that something was off because her daughter wasn't prone to disappearing. So by October 18th of 2016, her mother would officially report her missing. The beginning of the investigation would go as normal, interviewing family and friends. But the authorities knew that they had a hard time ahead of them because after all, they were starting this investigation a week out. And with time, investigations become harder to analyze. One of their steps would be to try and trace the GPS on her cell phone, but her cell phone was turned off. While the investigation was going on, her mother didn't waste any time trying to help. She would raise money to start an independent investigation, while the authorities tried to find her daughter. After a couple of days had passed, the authorities had too come to the conclusion that something sinister might have happened, and on October 20th of 2016, they would turn to the media in hopes of generating leads. On the same day that her story aired on the media, her boyfriend Joseph Tejada would be arrested on separate charges. He would be arrested on a warrant for burglary and taken down to headquarters. While at headquarters, he would be questioned about Brianna, but he didn't offer any information. He simply told the authorities he didn't know where she was and he wasn't cooperating. So, he would then be transported to the local jail, awaiting his other charges. But at this time, they had no evidence. All they had was a missing 21-year-old woman and an uncooperative ex-boyfriend. Days after Joseph was arrested, he would receive a bond, and he would make it, and he would once again be a free man. The month of October of 2016 would come to a close, and they were still no closer to finding Brianna. And then, November. The days would also begin to trickle away. Those days would begin to turn into weeks. But the only sighting of Brianna at this time was the many missing posters that were spread throughout the city.
A young woman vanishes without a trace, and now cops need somebody to call them and say, look, I think I have some information about where she might be.
All right, now this is important, okay? Can you help? It's this week's Crime of the Week. Check this out. 21-year-old Brianna Wood has been missing for weeks. Her family and friends have not seen or heard from her. We're told Brianna's cat was left at her home, unattended.
She was last seen at the PMI here downtown on Tonkawa.
Brianna's mother first reported her missing back on October the 11th. Mom told cops she's concerned because she spoke with Brianna daily and hadn't heard from her in almost a week. Is there a possibility that she was abducted or harmed?
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of speculation, a lot of room for speculation. We're worried that maybe something has happened, but at this point we don't have any supporting evidence.
Brianna is 5'5", weighs about 100 pounds, has black hair and hazel eyes.
She's missing. We're really concerned about her. This is unlike her to be not in contact with her family. She had a cat that she cared for.
Her picture has been posted all over social media, in newspapers, on television, and still no one has come forward with any kind of information about her whereabouts.
It's really come to a point where we really want the public to help us find Brianna Wood.
If you have any information about the whereabouts of Brianna Wood, call Crime Stoppers at 888-TIPS or submit a tip online at 888tips.com. If your tip leads to an arrest, you could get a $2,500 cash reward. And as always, you remain anonymous.
By November 30th of 2016, the authorities would release a piece of evidence. They would release a surveillance tape taken at a local pawn shop. In this video, a woman enters who favors Brianna, but it wasn't her. It was a woman who looked like her, who just so happened to be using her ID. The surveillance tape was recovered from October 17th of 2016, merely days after Brianna's disappearance. they would once again ask for the public's help in identifying this person. Not long after the video aired, they would find the woman in the video, who happened to be the friend of Brianna. During the interview, her friend would tell authorities that they were close and that she had often used her ID with her consent. And when the interview concluded, the authorities would come to the conclusion that she wasn't a suspect, leaving them right back at square one. Like October, the month of November would come to a close and make way for December. By now, tips had came in, but none of them had panned out, and by December 29th of 2016, they would receive a major tip. The caller would tell the authorities that the streets were talking, and they heard that the body of Brianna could be found in Flower Bluff, Texas, in a rural pond. So the authorities go out to this location in order to check it. But once there was no sign of Brianna and no evidence that she had ever been at that location. The year of 2016 is now coming to a close, and on New Year's Eve, the final firework would go up in the sky. And when the next year began, there was still no sighting of Brianna and no clue to her whereabouts. January 1st of 2017 would be especially hard for Brianna's family. They were bringing in the new year, minus a family member. But little did they know that the next day, the authorities would receive a tip that would turn this investigation upside down. January 2nd, 2017. An inmate at the local jail would reach out to the authorities, and he would tell them that he had first-hand knowledge of where the body of Brianna was located. When questioned, he would tell them that he was paid money to help hide the body, and he can take them to where she is. So, the following day, on January 3rd of 2017, this inmate would lead the investigators to an abandoned home. This home was located right off of State Highway 666 and State Highway 1833. Once inside of the building, he would point to an area in which a box was located, covered by a sheet. The authorities then removed the sheet, and then they realized that this box is duct taped. And once they removed the duct tape, inside of the box, they would locate the remains of 21-year-old Brianna Wood. The mystery as to where Brianna was no longer a mystery, so the authorities would tape off the scene and begin their homicide investigation. The body would then be shipped off to the medical examiner's office for a full autopsy. The autopsy would reveal that Brianna had sustained a gunshot wound to the back head region. The authorities now have her body, but there's one problem with the inmate. He didn't know exactly what happened to her. The only thing he did was help hide the body. But as far as what transpired, he was in the dark. And without a real suspect, they can't bring forth the culprit. Miraculously, the next day, on January 4th of 2017, another inmate would come forward. This inmate claims that while Joseph Tejada was locked up for the unrelated burglary, he admitted to harming Brianna. This inmate tells the authorities that Joseph Tejada says that he fired a weapon. He also fractured her arm. And then when she was gone, he then proceeded to violate her. He was questioned why he didn't come forward with this information when he learned it, because after all, Joseph Tejada was previously locked up, but he had bonded out. But the inmate told the authorities that at that time, he didn't believe he was telling the truth. He thought he was just another inmate trying to look tough. But when he saw the news the prior day that the body of Brianna had been found, he decided to come forward. Well, it turns out that this inmate's account about her arm being fractured and also being violated matched up with the autopsy report, and the autopsy hadn't been released. And seeing that the inmate knew that information, they knew then he was telling the truth. By January 9th of 2017, Joseph Tejada would be arrested on charges of murder. By March of 2017, he would formally be indicted. Now with the culprit in custody, the authorities wouldn't stop there. They would continue to investigate. And by December of 2017, the number of people arrested in this case is unbelievable.
Finally, some answers after a year-long homicide investigation.
Several people have been indicted in the murder investigation of Brianna Wood, the young woman who is believed to have been murdered by Joseph Tejada.
Now, the announcement made from the Nueces County District Attorney's Office was made, by that office. Reporter Ashley Portillo attended today's press conference. Ashley, we know that there are several more people that are alleged to have helped Tejada. How did Brianna Wood's family react to all of this?
Well, Gonzalez said Wood's murder was a network of individuals doing a lot of bad things, and those people have been indicted by a grand jury.
42-year-old Sandra Vasquez and 28-year-old Christopher Gonzalez would share capital murder charges. It is alleged that Gonzalez and Vasquez were the masterminds, and that they told Joseph that either you take out Brianna or we'll take out you. Alongside of them, 37-year-old Gregorio Cruz, 33-year-old Magdalena Carjaval, and 47-year-old Rosalinda Muzella would all be charged with tampering with physical evidence. Rosalinda was the mother of Joseph. Prosecutors allege that she rented a U-Haul for her son in order to help him transport the body. One of the last to be arrested would be 65-year-old Theodore Allen, who is facing charges for robbery. One by one, they would all be captured and arrested. They would all have their day in courts, where they would initially show up and all plead not guilty. As far as court, their court dates wouldn't come quick, because their lawyers would be playing games. They would often delay the case. They were having problems with the defendants being able to keep their lawyers. Lawyers were resigning, and this was leading to a lot of confusion. So 2018 and 2019 would pass, but they still hadn't had their day in court. And by 2020, well, we all know what happened that year. Due to COVID, their cases were once again being delayed. Aside from that, a fork was about to be thrown in the road. With all of the commotion, the prosecutor was having a hard time, so he would ask the mother of Brianna to help him go over the paperwork. Well, a witness being a part of the court process isn't allowed, and a few of the defendants would motion to have their charges dismissed.
An attorney for Sandra Vasquez, the alleged ringleader of the Brianna Wood murder, are asking for her case to be dismissed. Their reasons include witness tampering and a compromised investigation. Vasquez's defense turned in their motion to dismiss with prejudice for prosecutorial misconduct on Friday. They cite a 6 Investigate story where Wood's mother alleged she was shown evidence in her daughter's trial by Nueces County Assistant District Attorney Angelica Hernandez.
Thankfully, the judge would deny this motion, and he would let them know that they would stand trial. One by one, they would all begin to go to court. But this time, things were different. They would all show up to court and enter pleas of guilty. Vasquez and Gonzalez, who were accused of being the masterminds, would enter a plea of guilty for engaging in organized crime. They would both receive a sentence of 10 years. Gregorio Cruz pled guilty to tampering with physical evidence, and he would receive a sentence of 8 years. Magdalena Carvajal would plead guilty to the same, and she would receive a sentence of 10 years. The mother of Joseph Tejada, who is Rosalinda Muzella, she would have her charges dismissed, And as for 65-year-old Theodore Allen, who was awaiting charges on robbery, well, he would never see his court date. He would pass away before justice could ever be served. And last but not least, Joseph Tejada.
Breaking news from the Nueces County Courthouse tonight, where Joseph Tejada has pleaded guilty for the 2016 murder of his ex-girlfriend.
The guy who actually carried out the act, he would receive a plea deal where he would receive 25 years for the murder, 20 years for the burglary, and 20 years for an assault. All of these sentences would run concurrently. And with him already spending an amount of years in jail, he has time served under his belt, meaning he could hit the streets in as little as 18 years. As for a motive was never announced, because while the trial proceedings were going on, everyone had a gag order. They weren't allowed to talk. And since they all showed up and pled guilty, there was no court case. But if we had to take a guess, it's kind of self-explanatory. She left him, and he couldn't handle it. What happened to 21-year-old Brianna Wood was completely tragic. By all accounts, she was a loving and bright soul. Someone who would give you the shirt off of her back if you needed it. And in the end, what she got in return was to be placed in a box, hidden inside of an abandoned home, awaiting to be found. And it's completely heartbreaking. Rest in peace, Brianna Wood. Thank you for being a light for others.